apologize for everything. This room still doesn't have internet, so hopefully I have downloaded everything I need for the class. Put it on my laptop today, so we'll go ahead and get started. Hey, how's it going, Ben?
Good, how are you?
So I'll start out reviewing chapters 3 and 4 in the management book, and then move on from there. How's this looking for you? Make this a little bigger. And I can make both Bluebeam full screen. Okay, that's a little better. All right, so we have grown up and come into a time where companies are not just in one single country, but countries, many countries, and many companies are global. So to be global, you have to be in more than one company. So we have tons of companies that way. Different countries and what those citizens value. Keep in mind, this is, you guys did read the assignment from Canvas from last week, right? So this is a fast review. So these are the values based on these certain countries. And some initial research in management. We've got Hofstadter's framework. And then he predicts different behaviors for people from different countries, and how the power relationship goes between managers and their employees. And let's see, so that's that. So social responsibility, right? We hear a lot about that. We hear a lot about the new buzzwords, the most recent one, ESG, right? Which is environmental and social responsibility and governance. Previously it was diversity, equity, inclusion. So social responsibility is hard-coded now into our accounting systems. Companies starting last year now have to report on what they're doing to be more environmentally responsible and more socially responsible, and also what they're doing about their governance, which is managing their firms. So in the past there was some question about the value of social responsibility, and that some companies thought that they weren't maximizing their profit, and then they were getting a little confusion in the purpose of their company, and they were concerned about the costs. But basically public expectations and now government expectations are that we're going to include everybody in our hiring practices, and we're going to manage everybody equally and in a socially responsible way. And we're also going to be sustainable. So sustainability means that we do things that don't use up all the resources in one generation, and we try to conserve our resources and develop future resources, and make sure that we're not polluting too much, making sure that we're leaving the water supply in good shape, and the air is not ruined. Ethical leadership. So being ethical leadership is really the best way to approach it. I'm sure that criminal enterprises wouldn't like that, but being an ethical leader always pays off as far as the organization. Let's see. So we were talking a lot more about ethics, and I think you guys have an actual ethics class somewhere along the line too, don't you? An actual class just talking about ethical behaviors. And what type of diversity are we finding in the workplace now? So we're finding diversity of ages. We're finding a diversity of people from different countries, more women going into the job place than before, LGBT, we've got religious diversity and disabled diversity. So we've got something for everybody. So naturally, we are around 50-50% men and women on the planet, very close to that. So in the past, women haven't been represented. When I grew up going to an architecture firm, the firm that I worked for in 1980 didn't have any women working in the design or the engineering sections. The women were working as secretaries, and but throughout the years, we have seen a great growth, and it's a fantastic thing. You don't want to work in a company that's all men. It's kind of boring. So we also want race and ethnicity not to be a factor in employment. So to consider that is, that's racism. So we have to give everybody an equal chance. With the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, we also have to find a place to give disabled people a place in our companies. We have found out that disabled people can provide great services. They can be excellent employees. So it's a good thing that we are including them. Religion. Well, Civil Rights Act says that we can't discriminate against anybody because of religion. So we can't do that. Religious, country of origin, sex, gender identity, or sexual orientation, none of these things are something that you can discriminate people on. Other types of diversity. So there are other types of diversity that we haven't even talked about in this, which we just want a little bit, we want everybody. So just a reminder, when you get to these sections, these review sections, these are going to be the source of the questions for the quizzes and for the midterm and the final exam. So they're directly from these sort of chapter summaries. So just a healthy reminder of that. Questions on chapter 3, or review chapter 4. A good decision should be judged by the process used, not the results achieved. In some cases, a good decision results in an undesirable outcome. So as a decision maker, you can control the process, but in the real world, factors outside of our control affect the outcome. So using the right process might not always provide a perfect outcome. So very challenging. Process in and of itself is not everything. So we still are in the business of working with people, working with our customers, managing people, managing our customers. So the human factor always comes into play. So the decision-making process is still good to have a process. The identification of a problem and looking at the criteria for a decision, allocation of the weights of those criteria, looking at alternatives, analyzing the alternatives, and selecting the best alternative, and then implementing that selection. So then after that, we can evaluate whether that was the best way to do it. Is it a good process? Was it a good decision? So in Exhibit 4-5 here, we got common decision-making errors and biases in business. So overconfidence, because of, in the decision-making, overconfidence in someone's ability to make an intuitive decision versus one based on facts. Decisions could be made based on the desire for immediate gratification or the fact that somebody had something happen to them in the past. That's hindsight. The decision making could be self-serving, so that creates errors. The decision, there could be an anchoring effect. So momentum is very hard to break. So changing the existing conditions is difficult, so that's an anchoring effect. Other things, selective perception. So in selective perception, you see the things that you want to see and you miss out on the other things. Sunk costs. So decisions can be made in error based on the fact that we already bought all this equipment, the cost is sunk, so we're going to continue to go with the losing operation that way. Randomness in decision making is probably a bad idea most of the time. Representation. So the decision making could have a representation error for the facts, and decision making could be harmed by a non-availability of facts. Framing means that people framed the conditions in a way that maybe wasn't completely correct. And then confirmation bias is confirmation based on your own experiences. So the three approaches that we can use to make better decisions. Let's see, let me zoom in here. It's a little small there, isn't it? So what are the long-term objectives? How do I handle unmotivated employees? How many employees should I have report directly to me? What activity in the organizations need to be controlled? So all of these various decisions fall under the umbrella of planning, organizing, leading, and controlling, right? So we've got to do all these tasks, and this is how we continue to manage the situation. So we continue to iterate the situation, look at the facts, adjust to the facts. So rational decision making. Rational decisions mean you describe choices that are consistent and the value of maximizing within specified constraints. So those constraints are rational. What is objective and logical here? The way the rational decision maker should approach it is, can we be fully objective and logical? We can we can try to do our best, but we can never be 100% fully objective and logical. If the problem is clear and is not so ambiguous, can the problems ever really be that, clear? If a goal is a specific goal regarding a decision, can it really ever be that clear and specific? So any kind of a rational approach is good to have, but you can't get locked into it. It's not 100% realistic with reality. So bounded rationality starts to make more sense. We start thinking about it, not the way things should be, but how things are and how we can make them better. So commitment, escalation of commitment, right? Making a commitment to a bad decision is just as hard to do as it is to make a good decision. Nobody wants to admit that that decision was flawed in the beginning, and they don't want to take the time to search for new alternatives. So where does intuition have a place in managerial decision making? It has some place. So intuitive decision making can bring in the experience of running companies and running businesses, along with making the employees feel better. So these are unconscious factors. So these are intuitive decision-making functions. So what is intuition? Let me just get a little bigger here so you can read it. So intuition, if you have experience-based decisions, managers make decisions based on their past experiences. If you have affect-initiated decisions, managers must make the decision based on the feelings or emotions. If you have a cognitive-based decision, based on how you're going to learn about it, managers make decisions about knowledge and training people. Subconscious mental processing, that's the intuition that the thought just comes to you as you're doing your ordinary work. And managers use data from the subconscious mind to help them make the decisions. And then values are ethics-based decisions. they make it based on their value systems, and make decisions along those lines. So it shouldn't replace the rational decision-making approaches. It helps you to act more quickly with limited information, and then paying attention to intense feelings and emotions when making decisions is important, because better decisions then can be made, being aware of those feelings. So the types of problems and the decisions that managers face on a day-to-day basis could be structured or unstructured, and then they can come from the top down or the bottom up. So certainty, risk, and uncertainty are factors that take place here, and that determine where we're going to go with our risk management decisions. So if we had a certainty that there was going to be no risk in a certain situation, then it's going to allow us to act differently than if we have a situation where there's risk. Common risk is historical recessions, right? Managers know that the recessions are always going to come in a cyclical fashion. And then uncertainty. So always a certain amount of level of uncertainty in the world. So with uncertainty in the decisions, we use more risk management techniques to manage the capability of the decision to be adjusted for the risk. Okay. Just before I go to the next, there's just a quick article I want to share with you, and it's about Ben Newman, and he is a guy that wrote Uncommon Leadership. He's a real guy, and he's a business consultant. He has an enthusiasm for business, which led him to write these books and to interview a lot of superstars in the sports world. So he wants to know what motivates certain people to come to that high level, right? The high level of a sports coach for a major football team, for basketball teams, college teams that are really high performance teams. So that's why they have this article in here. So this is Ben's ideas, his philosophy. So the first article was Coach Nick Saban. He's a college coach, and he won more than 80% of his college games. So it's pretty much, it's a very, very high bar to overcome. Not that many people can get that. So he discusses what his attitude is as far as how does he absorb the implications of a problem. So the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. Break it down even further, the way you do one thing is the way that you do everything, right? So your style of working on your homework is the way you do everything. And he focuses on his teams. He requires them to have a high level of focus with him. So it's the way he manages it, having his philosophy, his discipline. All right, let's see what else. So I'll just take a look at that, and then we'll move on to chapter 5 and 6 in the management book. Okay. So the future is unpredictable, but there is a certain amount of predictability in there. Flexible planning includes multiple scenarios that could occur in planning for a situation. So the learning outcome for chapter 5, learning outcomes. All right. So what is planning, and why do managers need to plan? The purpose of planning is to make sure that the business is performing well, make sure that we're doing everything that we can to improve our profitable situation and make the business succeed. So what we do is that we write down specific goals at the time, and we give ourselves a deadline for those goals, and then we share those goals with the rest of the team. So the managers may go together in a private retreat and then come back with a plan on how we're going to meet the sales goals for a particular business. For example, so formal planning in a situation like McDonald's. So they had over 35,000 restaurants at that time, I think even more now, 120 countries. And how does it, manage all of that and plan to have that very coordinated effort where everybody in the world looks at this brand and they can see it and they're attracted to it. So the planning establishes the goals and the standards for all these stores, and they work together. More reasons for planning, right? They engage in planning. We are managers. We engage in planning to reduce the impact of change, minimize waste and redundancy, set the standards, facilitate the control, and provide directions to our company. So criticisms of formal planning, it could create a system which is too rigid. So the managers need to keep flexible and keep an understanding, keep an eye open on what the situation really is. Formal plans, they can't actually replace intuition and creativity. So the people making the plans have to bring the creativity and the intuition and the ideas to the planning. So planning should enhance people's creativity. Another criticism of planning that it forces managers to focus their attention on today's competitive information, not tomorrow's survival. So formal planning, you definitely have to do it, but don't get caught up in what is happening just today, because we want to be in this for long term, and you have to think about what's going to be the reaction and response to a long-term success. So the response to that is, open to going into those unknown areas when there's opportunities there. Another criticism, formal planning reinforces success, which could cause people to later fail. So the tradition is, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So in fact, if you do that and you don't adjust and change things every once in a while, you will in fact have to, you'll have to change things then. So managers need to be flexible to the unknown and open to do things in new ways. And it does everybody think in management that formal planning improves organizational performance? Does it pay to plan? Or is it not? So what can we conclude about it? We've done studies about it. There's been formal statistical studies. Formal planning usually results in higher profits for those companies. The quality of the process and the implementation of the process also predicts a greater level of success. And those organizations where it didn't lead to higher performance, there was probably some outside influence, like extra government regulations or unforeseen economic problems. So strategic planning and strategic management. So what do we do in the strategic management process? So that is coming up with strategies, right? Coming up with strategies for the company. For example, the top one is the Chicago Cubs. They have a new strategic plan, and IBM has had a time with new data partnerships. Toyota announced that it was going to increase its partnership in Mexico and China. And then ESPN, they actually remodeled themselves. Taco Bell has moved themselves into the breakfast business, so there you go. and Mercedes-Benz went into the market with luxury SUVs and pickup trucks. So these were good strategic choices that the companies made to react to future changes that they saw coming in the marketplace. And this is important because businesses that don't pay attention to this will likely ultimately fail. And then organizations are complex, especially big companies, very, very complex with a lot of people. So strategic management has to be employed also for hospitals, for government agencies, for schools. We also have to do planning. So what are the steps in the process? First step, identify the current missions, goals, and strategies. So the mission is the number one mission of what the company does. So this is the SWOT analysis: strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So identify the organization's current mission, do a SWOT analysis, the external threats, opportunities, and then the internal analysis of strengths and weaknesses. This process will inform strategies. Then the strategies that are chosen will be implemented, and then we'll continue to go back and forth in this process, keep doing it, and evaluate the results. So the next, so the step 2 is doing the external analysis in the process, right? So the external analysis, what are all the things that are coming at us from all directions at the company? And this, for example, this is a mission statement kind of grid here. So who are the firm's customers? Where does the firm compete? What is the growth commitment and financial stability? What are the firm's basic beliefs, values, and ethical priorities? How responsive is the firm to social and environmental concerns? And what are the major products? Is the technology current? What is the firm's major competitors in the marketplace? And what are their concerns for their employees? So step 3 is doing that internal analysis, the organization's resources, the capabilities, the core competencies, the strengths, weaknesses, doing the SWOT analysis. And then after that, we go to step 4, formulating the strategies and figure out what to do. Once we figure out what to do, then we say, let's do it. And what's the time frame? After the time frame, we evaluate how well did that work out. So what kind of strategic weapons do managers have? They have customer service, employee skills and loyalty, innovation, quality, social media, and big data. So all these things help us run our businesses better. Let's see, here's a little case study if you want to look at a casino. So organizational strategies. Oops, let me talk a little bit about that. So corporate strategy would be in this case, a multi-business corporation. The competitive analysis, you have to have strategic business units, 1, 2, 3 different ones. And then the entire business is going to be run with management in research and development, manufacturing, marketing, human resources, and finance. So the strategies then, if you have a growth strategy, a stability strategy, or a renewal strategy. So those 3 strategies depend on what kind of business you're in, what's the opportunities that you're facing, how can we grow the business, how do we maybe add a vertical that's gaining control of other marketplaces related to the company. Horizontal is combining with competitors, And then diversification is moving into other areas. So a stability strategy for an organization: do the best things that you can well and continue doing those. They don't grow very much, but they don't fall behind much either. So a renewal strategy. So that's where a company is in trouble and they have to decide what they need to do to survive. So retrenchment, we could fix performance issues, but if we're really in bad shape, we've got to do a turnaround strategy in serious performance areas. And then both of these strategies, managers come in, they cut costs, they restructure organizational operations. So a competitive strategy. How is a company going to stay competitive in its business? Each business unit then should combine with the other units, but also have their own competitive strategy. Not in such a way that they conflict with each other, though, in other units. So the Porter's competitive strategies framework leaves these 4 items here: cost leadership strategy, differentiation strategy, a focus strategy, or stuck in the middle. So cost leadership, the company has the leading situation in the marketplace for their cost. So they're highly efficient, they keep their overhead to a minimum, and it keeps costs under control. Their product is perceived as just as good a quality as the competitors, but for a lower cost. So another way to do it is differentiation strategy is offering unique products that nobody else offers. So exceptional quality, extraordinary design, some capabilities that no one else has. And a focus strategy, so a cost advantage or differentiation is based on your product. So if you have a focus, a better distribution channel, or a better geographic location, a focus strategy can be helpful there. And then stuck in the middle, if an organization can't differentiate themselves in any of these other ways, then they're just kind of stuck, and they need to really start thinking about which of these other directions they want to go if the company does want to grow and survive. All right, benchmarking. So benchmarking is a way of comparing the company with other similar companies. So they compare all of the costs, all of the employees, all the ways of doing business, and see where their competitors are maybe doing better or worse than them. All right, so let me just move through this. Section 5.3, how do managers set the goals and develop the plans? And we've got focus, strategy, functional, goals and objectives, and plans. So it might seem like a simple process, but we have to first figure out what types of goals. We've got stated goals versus real goals. So the stated goals are the official statements of the company, but the real goals are that the organization actually pursues. So the actions speak louder than words. Setting the goals is one thing, coming from the corporate headquarters, pushing down on other people, and then the reality is that people have to get the job done in the place that they're at, not necessarily the corporate headquarters. Traditional goal setting. So it's from the top down, right? The top management has an objective. They want to improve the company's performance and significant operating profits in division, increased profits in department, and the quality wants to remain the same. Management by objectives. That is a big buzzword. It's the process of setting mutually agreed upon goals and using those goals to evaluate back the employees that are in the company. So you'll hear about this a lot, and the managers in this situation will sit down with the employees and review the goals and review where they're at. And management by objective has been around since the 50s. And how's it used? It's the overall objectives. So it's very broad objectives. And then the result is that everybody in the company gets a review, and the hierarchy, everybody knows where they stand. So for each employee, management by objective means that you may have an individual goal based on your particular department. And then if everybody is working on their individual goals, then suddenly the benefit to the company starts to kick in and fall into place. So whether this is effective, it's hard to judge. Feedback is very important, and then everybody participating is also very important in this situation. Absolutely, the number one thing is that top management has to be very committed to it, and when they are, then it makes the management by objective work out much better. Let's see. Well-written goals, right? Setting the goals. Let me zoom in here. Reviewing key job tasks and the mission statements of employees. Evaluate the resources that are available. And determining the goals, determine everyone's goals, individually or with input from other departments. And then make sure the goals are well communicated and written down. And then build in the feedback mechanisms so that we can assess if the goals are being made or not. And then if the goals are being made, put some rewards that are linked to the achievement of those goals. Okay. Types of plans. We have different types of plans. We have strategic and tactical time frame plans. We have long-term versus short-term. We have specific plans, directional plans. So once we've got it all written down, we could start to pursue those plans, right? So you can see that it's very important to have them written down and quantified. So with they're written in terms of the outcomes, and they have to be measurable. If they're not measurable, it's a little tough to see if you actually made a difference. And the time frame has to be specific. The goals have to be attainable, which doesn't mean they have to be too easy. They should be somewhat challenging. Once again, written down and then communicated to everybody in the organization that needs to act on this plan. So a strategic plan is something that applies to the entire organization, and a tactical plan is something that ascribes to a smaller unit. So long-term plans, as far as time frames, anything more than 3 years constitutes a more long-term plan. Short-term plans are covering 1 year or less. Specific plans, they are clearly defined and with not much room for interpretation and in the implementation. So for example, his unit and this manager wants to increase the output by 8% over the next 12 months. So he might establish certain procedures, allocations of money for the budget, and work schedules so they can meet that goal. So when uncertainty is high and managers must be more flexible and respond to unexpected change, then they're going to use a directional plan. So it gives them flexibility based on whatever direction the actual organization goes in after the plan has been implemented. Let's see. Single-use plan, it's something that's just designed for the one time only. Standing plan means that you keep replanning it on an annual basis or more frequently. So developing the plans. The top executives are going to be involved with a lot of the strategic planning. The middle executives are going to be with the operational planning, and the first level managers are going to have to do some of both. So in the process, the contingency factors, right? At the organizational level, the degree of environmental uncertainty, and the length of the future commitments. So this relationship is shown by that. And the contingency factor is that if we have some unknown factors, we may apply a certain budget amount to that and have a contingency for the plan. The plan should extend far enough so that we know those commitments, but we also have enough flexibility to react to the future as we have it unveiled to us. Other more strict approaches to planning. Federal and state and local government, they work on plans, environmental plans, as well as their own business plans. So they have longer term programs. So longer term programs require a commitment for tens, decades and decades, not just multi-years. And in these organizations, the governmental organizations, they have formal planning departments so that they go through this cycle every budget period. And what planning issues do managers face now? So, contemporary issue, we've got dynamic environments, right? Planning changes, things happen quickly. We have to be able to adapt to whatever situation occurs in the field. Let's see. So, in developing these, right, in the uncertain environment, we have plans that are specific but somewhat flexible, and they have to be useful. They have to be specific enough to be useful, but also recognize that it's an ongoing process and it has to react to the environmental changes that are occurring. Managers have to stay alert to that and respond as needed, and then it's important to continue the formal planning process to make sure that it's leading to the right effect. Let's see, what else here? All right, environmental scanning in this case is analysis of the external environment of the work environment and the competition environment, screening large amounts of information to try to get competitive intelligence out of that information. So by looking at all this information, analyzing it, and studying what the competition's doing, companies can then know what they can do for themselves to improve their businesses. So the managers, when they gather this information, they need to be very careful that it's the right information, that the information is accurate, and that it's timely. All right, there's the review grid for Chapter 5. Questions on anything so far? You guys need a little break here? Is this long-winded for you?